can't, you have no intuition about a hydrogen molecule or an oxygen molecule or anything like that. Whereas we're part of this trading, and we understand what's going on when you buy a newspaper for $1. It's because you value the newspaper more than $1. Period. Case closed. So Austrian economics is a system of undeniable, incontrovertible statements that attempt to explain and understand what's going on, and I certainly hope during the question period, which I hope will be long, that's what I was told, and the lecture itself will be rather short, that we can get into some of the more specifics of this. So just to give another example or two, take the minimum wage law. Now, the minimum wage law says, I don't know what it is here in British Columbia, probably $8 or $9 an hour. Is that right?
Sounds about right. 8.
8. Okay. It says that it shall be illegal to pay anyone less than $8 an hour. Well, for the Austrians, that means that any profit-maximizing entrepreneur will not hire someone that he thinks has a marginal revenue and productivity of less than $8 an hour. Suppose by marginal revenue productivity, I mean the extra amount that one more worker will add to your bottom line. So suppose that, I think that, what's your name? I forget.
My name's Evan.
Evan. Suppose I think Evan's worth $5 an hour. That if I hire him, I'll be richer by $5 an hour. Will I pay him 8? No, because if I want to profit maximize, and I have to pay him 8 and I'm only getting in 5, I'm going to lose $3 an hour, so I'm not going to hire him. And therefore he's going to be unemployed. And this is sort of something you don't test. Now you might illustrate this, and I've done illustrations of this. So what I did when I was at the Fraser Institute, what I did is I took all the minimum wage laws of, or rather all the minimum wage levels of all the provinces. It varied from, I don't know, $5 to $8. Now it varies from $8 to $10 because of inflation or whatever. I was here, this is stuff I did in the 90s or in the 80s. And then I correlated that with all the unemployment rate of people that I think have below minimum wage level productivity levels, namely teenagers or young people. And I found a very good correlation. The provinces that had the highest minimum wage also had the highest unemployment rate for young people. It wasn't a perfect correlation. It wasn't, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, a one-for-one correlation, namely the province that had the highest minimum wage had the highest unemployment rate. It might have had the 9th highest unemployment rate, but there was a very big correlation. But the difference between the Austrians and the neoclassicals is we say that just illustrates the theory. It doesn't test it. Whereas the neoclassicals think that you can test it. They think, in a sense, that you can test the thing about the pen and the wristwatch that I was talking about, that you can test everything, namely that there are no untestable principles. And we Austrians would deny that. Now, there are some areas where Austrians and free market neoclassical types agree: minimum wage, free trade, rent control, monetary theory, namely that the more money that the government creates, other things equal, the higher the inflation. But then there are certain areas where Austrians and neoclassicals diverge sharply. One of them is in the business cycle theory. You asked about Keynesian business cycle theory, and maybe we can get into that. Another one is antitrust. There are several others where there are gigantic variations. Technical issue is in indifference curves. Another one would be diminishing marginal utility of money, namely welfare. I'm just sort of sprinkling these out here to twig your interest if you're interested in following these, because I promised that I would stop at a half hour, and I'm getting close. So just another minute or two. It's a very interesting point that all the Austrian economists I know are very, very strong free marketeers. They might not all be anarcho-capitalists, but they're at least minimal government types. Whereas the neoclassical economists that I know, they're all over the lot. many of them are free enterprise. Economics is among the most free enterprise of all the disciplines within a university. Like the economists are more free enterprise than the sociologists, say. I mean, that's no news, but by a gigantic amount. But many economists of the mainstream variety believe in this thing called market failure. They're big into market failure. Yes, yes, markets are good, but you know, the government has to fix it up when markets are imperfect, and then there are imperfections all over the place. The big imperfections are public goods, externalities, and monopoly. But I swear, I think the way you get a reputation among mainstream economists is to come up with some new, weird market failure. That's their big thing. Whereas for Austrians, there are no market failures. Yes, there are human failures in the sense that human beings are not perfect. We can't fully anticipate everything. We have less than full knowledge. But there's no market failure. Markets work. Another difference between Austrians and neoclassical economists is this thing called perfect competition. For the mainstream types, perfect competition is the model that the reality is matched against, and when reality fails to meet up with the very artificial constructs of perfect competition, they say, well, this is market failure and the government's got to step in, as if government will make things better and not worse. Okay, so that's sort of a ballpark discussion, brief discussion, 10, 15 minutes on each. And now, based on our agreement, I will call a halt to my formal lecture and call for questions. Yes?
This is probably just an extension of your lecture, but could you explain to us why? What is the most compelling argument that the anarcho-capitalist has for not being a minimal capitalist?
Minimal government.
Minimal libertarian.
Right. Well, I think the main criticism, I happen to be a anarcho-capitalist, so I suppose I'm representative. I can speak for us vis-a-vis minarchists or minimal government advocates. I've had a debate with Tibor Machan. I don't know if anyone's heard of him. Several articles where we go back and forth. He's saying, well, anarcho-capitalism stinks, and I'm putting this in rough language. And I say, no, 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 it's minarchism, that's lousy, and you know, we go back and forth on that. The main argument that I have with Archy is anarchy, the prefix an means against, like Anabaptist means against baptism, right, or anti, and. If some of you want to sit around on the other side, there's plenty of room there to maybe get a better, well, sit where you want. The main objection that I have to the anarchist position is that they use compulsion. They say they demand a monopoly in a certain geographical area for their government. Like the US government has got 50 states. The Canadian government has got 10 provinces and 3, what do you call those? Territories. And that's it. And they claim every square inch of that. And if you want to secede, let's say you own a home in, you own some island off the coast here. Between here and Vancouver Island, what are those little islands called?
Gulf Islands.
Gulf Islands. Suppose I own a Gulf Island. And I say, okay, I'm seceding from Canada. I don't want anything to do with you guys, except, you know, I'll trade with you, I'll be a nice neighbor, but, you know, I'm not going to pay you taxes, and I'm not going to expect any defense or police or fire protection or, you know, just anything. I'll keep here myself. What would Harper do? Harper is the Prime Minister of Canada. Well, first of all, he'd fall down laughing and maybe get a big stomachache from laughing. But after that, he'd say, you know, are you serious? You know, you can't be serious. The RCMP is going to deal with you. You know, shut up and, you know, pay your taxes. But why? Why? I own this island. Say I was there. Say my grandfather was there before Canada started in 1867. Is that when Canada started? Right. Suppose my grandfather was on that island, some middle, you know, 30-acre island, and he gave it to my grandfather and